The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the sound of boots crunching against the rocky ground. The mission was simple, at least that's what they had been told. In the shadows of a foreign landscape, a team of elite Navy SEALs moved with practiced precision. Among them was the only woman on the team, a soldier who had proven time and time again that she could carry the same weight, face the same dangers, and make the same impossible choices as any of her brothers in arms. Her presence wasn't questioned anymore. She had earned it. But tonight, she was about to be tested in a way none of them expected. The order came in quick, sharp, and without hesitation. Shoot. A single command that required no explanation, no time for debate. The target was in her sights. All she had to do was squeeze the trigger, and the mission would move forward without delay. Every muscle in her body was trained to respond, every instinct drilled to obey. Yet, in that split second, something didn't feel right. Her finger hovered, her eyes narrowed, and she saw something the others didn't. The seconds stretched longer than they should have. The rest of the team waited for the shot, their trust resting on her steady hands. But instead of firing, she did the unthinkable. She refused. A single decision that went against every protocol, every expectation, and every instinct of survival they had been taught. Her silence, her hesitation, felt like betrayal in that moment. What none of them realized was that her refusal wasn't weakness, it was clarity. And in that hesitation, she saw the trap that could have destroyed them all. The question is, how could one moment of defiance turn into the very act that saved every single life on that mission? That night, her decision would rewrite the rules of trust, loyalty, and survival. But the price of saying no to an order in the middle of a battlefield is never simple. And before dawn broke, the entire team would understand why. The team froze in the dark, every man gripping his weapon tighter as they turned toward her. In the world of special operations, hesitation could cost lives, and disobedience could tear apart trust. Yet she stood firm, her eyes locked on the figure in her scope. Something about the scene wasn't adding up. The supposed enemy target wasn't moving like a soldier. The posture, the hesitation, it was wrong. She couldn't explain it yet, but every instinct in her body screamed that pulling the trigger would be a mistake. Her teammates whispered over comms, their voices tense. Some demanded answers, others pressed for action. Time was running out, and every second of delay meant greater risk. Still, she held her ground. She wasn't new to pressure. She had fought for her place on this team, training harder, pushing further, proving herself in ways few ever had. But this was different. This wasn't about skill or endurance. This was about trust in what her eyes were telling her, even when it went against everything she had been ordered to do. Memories of her training echoed in her mind. She remembered the lessons about instincts, about reading the smallest details others might overlook. But she also remembered the weight of consequences, how disobeying an order could destroy her career, her reputation, even her bond with the men who stood beside her. But in this moment, she couldn't shake the thought that what if the mission briefing had been wrong? What if the person in her sights wasn't who command thought they were? The silence stretched longer, tension thick as wire. Somewhere in the darkness, the figure shifted slightly, and a cold realization struck her. If she had fired, if she had obeyed, the entire mission might have been compromised before it even began. But the danger was far from over, and now every eye was on her. Her heart pounded in her chest as the silence dragged on, the kind of silence that could shatter trust with a single wrong move. She knew every man on the team was questioning her now, wondering if she had lost her nerve. But what they didn't know was that she had spent years learning to read more than just the surface. Before she ever became a Navy SEAL, She had been trained in intelligence work, studying patterns, body language, and the smallest details that could turn a mission from disaster to success. Those skills had saved lives before, and tonight they were screaming at her not to take the shot. The figure in her sights shifted again, not like a fighter preparing for combat, but like someone burdened by fear. The stance was wrong, the hands too hesitant, the shoulders too low. Whoever it was, they didn't move like an enemy. And yet, her team had been told this was the threat, the key to stopping something far bigger waiting in the shadows. Orders were orders, and her refusal to fire was starting to feel like a ticking bomb inside the unit itself. She could hear her commander's voice now, low and sharp in her earpiece. Take the shot. He didn't ask, he demanded. And for the first time since she joined the team, she felt the weight of being the only one who saw something different. She wasn't just fighting the enemy. They hadn't even revealed themselves yet. She was fighting doubt, suspicion, and the crushing knowledge that her choice would mark her forever in the eyes of the men beside her. Somewhere out there, beyond the figure in her scope, movement stirred in the darkness, and she realized with a jolt that the real danger hadn't even stepped into the light yet. The air felt heavier by the second, the weight of her decision pressing down on the whole team. She could sense their frustration, the shift in their breathing, the subtle clicks of fingers tightening on triggers. Every man was ready to unleash fire if she didn't act, but she couldn't shake the certainty in her gut. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The figure ahead raised a hand slightly, trembling, as if signaling for help rather than preparing to fight. In that instant, she noticed something glinting faintly in the moonlight. A wire trailing at their feet, barely visible in the dirt. Her pulse spiked. It wasn't a weapon. It was a trigger. One wrong shot, and the whole hillside would go up in flames. Her throat tightened, but before she could warn the others, more shadows moved in the distance. Shapes slipping silently through the dark, circling, waiting. The real enemy had been hiding all along, letting them believe they had the right target. The setup was flawless. The order to shoot wasn't just a mistake, it was the first step in a trap designed to wipe out the entire unit. She adjusted her grip on the rifle, every nerve in her body alive with tension. The commander's voice cut in again, harsher this time, demanding action. She wanted to shout what she saw, to warn them all, but even speaking risked giving away their position. Seconds ticked by like hours, and the line between obedience and survival grew thinner and thinner. The team was restless now, whispering, urging her to end it before the mission spiraled out of control. Yet all around them, the enemy crept closer, unseen, tightening the noose. Her refusal to fire had kept them alive so far, but one wrong move now could cost them everything. Her finger brushed the trigger, her breath steadying, as the darkness around them exploded with movement.
The hillside erupted in chaos. Shadows broke into full figures, moving fast and silent, weapons raised. The team snapped into defensive formation, but their focus was still split, half on the closing threat, half on her decision that had held them back. And then the second shock hit like a punch to the gut. The trembling figure in her scope finally lifted their head, and in the faint light she caught a glimpse of a face, terrified, young, and nothing like the hardened enemy they had been briefed on. It wasn't a target. It was a decoy. Someone forced into place, wired like bait, meant to draw their fire. If she had taken the shot, they all would have been buried under the blast, and the enemy waiting in the tree line would have finished whatever was left. The trap was deeper than anyone realized, and now they were standing in the middle of it. Her voice finally cut through the comms, sharp but steady. "It's a setup. Hold your fire." But instead of clarity, her words sparked doubt. Some of the team hesitated, Others cursed under their breath, and the commander's silence weighed heavier than gunfire. For the first time, their trust in her was collapsing right when they needed unity most. The enemy began to close the gap, their movements too calculated to be random. She scanned the ridge, heart pounding, and that's when she spotted the second layer of the ambush. More figures hidden higher up, aiming down on them like hunters ready to strike. They weren't just outnumbered, they were surrounded. Every instinct screamed that they had seconds left before the first shot was fired. The mission they thought they controlled had flipped completely, and now survival meant trusting the one teammate who had already broken the rules. The question was whether the others would see it before it was too late. The first gunshot cracked through the night, and in an instant the hillside lit up with fire. Bullets ripped through the air, dirt exploding around them as the enemy launched their ambush. The SEALs returned fire, pulling into cover, their training taking over. She stayed locked in place, her eyes fixed not on the attackers rushing from the trees, but on the terrified figure wired with explosives at the center of it all. The trap was still live, and if it detonated, every one of them would be lost. She made her move. Sliding down from her perch, she broke cover and sprinted toward the figure. Shouts erupted in her earpiece, warnings, disbelief, even anger, but she didn't stop. She reached the trembling figure, a young boy no older than 15, and yanked him down as bullets sliced overhead. Her hands worked fast, tracing the crude wiring strapped across his chest. It wasn't just explosives, it was linked to a remote trigger. Somewhere up the ridge, someone held the power to end it all. Her commander's voice finally cut through, hard and clipped. "What do you see?" For the first time that night, she felt the weight of trust in his tone. "A decoy. We've been baited." Her words carried across the comms, and the team shifted their fire, aiming higher, toward the ridge where the real threat was hidden. Seconds later, explosions roared, not from the boy's vest, but from enemy positions as the SEALs dismantled the ambush piece by piece. The hillside went quiet again, smoke hanging in the air. The team regrouped, bruised but alive. She pulled the boy close, his wide eyes saying everything words couldn't. For a moment, relief washed over them. She had been right. Her refusal had saved them. But just as they began to breathe, a new sound echoed from deeper in the valley. The low hum of engines, heavy and closing fast. The night wasn't over. The real mission had only just begun. The hum of engines grew louder, echoing through the valley like a warning that their night was far from done. The team dropped back into formation, weapons raised, ready to face whatever was coming next. But instead of enemy reinforcements, a convoy of Allied vehicles rolled into view. Command had sent backup, arriving in the final hour when they needed it most. Relief swept through the unit, though no one said a word. The mission had pushed them to the edge, and they all knew how close they had come to disaster. She guided the boy toward the convoy, her grip steady on her shoulder. The explosives had been disarmed, but the image of his frightened face stayed with her. This wasn't the kind of victory anyone celebrated. It was a reminder of the fine line they walked, where a single order could mean life or death, and where sometimes survival depended on trusting your instincts over commands. Her commander's voice approached, his expression unreadable under the dim lights. For a moment, she braced for a reprimand, maybe even the end of her place on the team, but instead, he gave a single nod. No words, just a gesture that said more than a speech ever could. She had broken the rules, but she had saved them all. And now, every man on the team knew it. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the valley in muted gold, the weight of the night began to lift. They had survived the ambush, uncovered the deception, and returned with more than they had set out for. The mission would be remembered not for the orders followed, but for the one moment of refusal that changed everything. Sometimes the bravest act isn't pulling the trigger, it's holding back. And that night, her choice became the reason they all made it home.